few weeks ago, I did not expect to be making a Houston Rockets video right now. And if I was, it was going to be about their offseason. What's the future going to look like in Houston? But all of a sudden, this team has figured it out. Now we're talking about them possibly in the playoffs and also a pretty crazy breakout from a couple of their main guys. But with the start of the men's and women's tournaments, this is my favorite time of the year to be a basketball fan. And I want to talk about the sponsor of today's video, PrizePicks. And I also have a free square selection for you as well, with Caitlin Clark scoring a single point counting as a free square selection on PrizePicks. If you've never done PrizePicks before, you go onto the site and you pick more or less for each of these numbers. You can do the men's tournament, the women's tournament, the NBA. There's all kinds of stuff going on right now, basketball-wise, and all you do is you pick the number, you pick more or less for each, you put together a handful of selections, and if you win some cash. And again, you get that free square with Caitlin Clark. If she scores a single point in the game, that is one square for your selection right off the bat. And if because the men's and women's tournaments are starting, you want to get started with PrizePicks yourself, you can also click the link in the description and get a 100% deposit match up to $100 as well when you use code SPORTING. So multiple promos going on right now in PrizePicks. You get a free square, a 100% deposit match up to $100 when you click the link in the description and you use code SPORTING. And there's so much basketball going on right now. It's an awesome time to get started with PrizePicks. And thank you again to PrizePicks for sponsoring this video. So I just kind of assumed that the Western Conference play-in picture, and honestly the East as well, was pretty much locked up. Houston was a couple of games out of the 10th spot. It seemed like Golden State, the Lakers, all these teams were going to make the play-in, especially after Alperen Sengun got hurt, and that's been Houston's best player this season. All of a sudden, as of the recording of this video, they've won 6 straight. Jalen Green is dropping 40 pieces on people, and all of a sudden, they might actually make the play-in. They're a couple of games out as we have a few weeks left now in the season, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening with Houston at the moment. And I want to start with Jalen Green. I did a more in-depth breakdown on this on one of my other channels. You guys want to check that out? I'll put that up in the top of the screen here. But Jalen Green has really figured some stuff out here post All-Star break, and weirdly since Alperen Sengun went down. Now I don't think there's necessarily a correlation to that apart from just having more opportunities, more volume within the offense with Sengun not out there. But Jalen Green has been shooting the ball extremely well post All-Star break. 38% three-point shooter after the All-Star break, around 30% pre-All-Star break, and that has opened up everything for him offensively and has created this really dynamic scorer all of a sudden. He's always been a high-volume three-point shooter, especially off the dribble. It's been a weapon he's tried to add to his game the entirety of his NBA career, and now it's actually working out for him. Prior to that, he was a really inefficient high volume three-point shooter, like on the Jordan Poole levels of high volume three-point shooting and inefficiency, and he has figured that kind of stuff out. He's averaging 23 points per game post All-Star break, and that's huge for them not only this season but also in terms of what the future is going to look like for Houston as well, because this is a guy that they are obviously heavily invested in, former 2nd overall pick, someone that they had really high hopes for. And I would say that through his first couple of seasons there was definitely some disappointment in Jalen Green in terms of how he was performing, especially from an efficiency standpoint. And this has been the best stretch of his career these last couple of weeks. And again, it's all just been opened up by that three-point shooting. And if he's going to be something close to this, I mean, maybe we're not expecting him to average 23, 25 points per game next season or something close to that, but if he can be close to what he is right now, it's massive for them, because one of the reasons that they made the investments that they did this prior offseason, bringing in Dillon Brooks, bringing in Fred VanVleet, is because they didn't feel like Jalen Green necessarily was going to develop into this guy, and they needed help in the backcourt, and they wanted to go and try and win. And now all of a sudden he is becoming this high-level scorer. Now, if you have been watching the channel for a little while, you're probably aware of the fact that I keep track of these kinds of things. When a guy is really good post All-Star break in a season, especially someone that was a former highly drafted player, 2nd overall in this case with Jalen Green, a lot of times those post All-Star break numbers are deceiving. And when you go into the following season, those numbers do not carry over. It's something I've called the Josh Jackson effect in the past, because Josh Jackson notoriously would average like 9 points per game pre-All-Star break, and then after the All-Star break he'd average like 15 a game for a couple of different reasons. Not as good players out there after the All-Star break. Teams aren't trying as hard as the season winds down, and typically those teams aren't really trying to win anyway, the teams with these formerly highly drafted guys on them, and so they just give a ton of opportunities to the guys that, in Josh Jackson's case, former top 5 pick. They were like, let's make sure that he's actually really bad. Let's make sure that we made a mistake here. Let's give him a ton of opportunities. I don't think that's what's happening here with Jalen Green, though, for one or two really big reasons, actually. One, overall scoring is down in the league right now. Post All-Star break, there's less fouls called. Teams are scoring less. The Jalen Green scoring is going up. He's going in the opposite direction of a trend. That's a good sign for him. And also, Houston's winning, and they're trying to win. Again, as we're recording this video, they won 6 straight. They're chasing down the Warriors potentially for that last play-in spot. It's not a situation like those Phoenix teams with Josh Jackson, where it's like they're winning, 20 games or something, and they're just throwing opportunities at one of their young guys. They're winning games while Jalen Green is doing this. And obviously, Sengun not being out there in some ways helps them more opportunities. In other ways, those opportunities are more difficult. And it's just really interesting and intriguing. But this isn't just a Jalen Green video, right? This is talking about Houston in general. And when you look at their roster, there's some cool stuff happening here. I still like Jabari Smith. I really like Amen Thompson, but I'm definitely settling more on them as like complementary pieces for this Houston team long term. There's still a lot of upside with each of those guys, but I just feel like when I think about what Houston is going to be over the next couple of seasons, I don't see either of those guys as like a key, creator, offensive weapon. And so if they can have Jalen Green become that guy or something close, or maybe go out and get somebody else and add to that, they're starting to put together a really strong core of guys with Şengün and Jalen Green as the offense, with Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith as the complementary, defensive, do everything, guys. Amen Thompson even playing some minutes at the 5 here lately as well, because he's such an incredible rebounder and such a great athlete. There's just a lot to like in Houston right now. And again, a couple of weeks ago, it was like, okay, kind of a lost season for them. They invested a lot in the offseason. They bring in Ime Udoka as the head coach, and they definitely expected to make the play-in and didn't look like they were going to. But this just shows you how a strong finish to the season can change things for teams. I'm not saying that this is going to be what Houston is, but keep in mind when Phoenix finally kind of made their run with Devin Booker, it came off of a strong run in the bubble. Ironically, they trade for Chris Paul, and then not long after, they're in the finals. Like, I'm not saying that's what's happening with Houston here, but the end of the season for these kinds of teams that are kind of on the fringe of making the play-in, in this case, in that case, the playoffs, it can mean a lot to the confidence level of the young group, as well as kind of giving some clarity for the organization in terms of where they should go in the future. And I've gotten this far in the video without even mentioning one of the other huge positives for Houston here, and that's that they've got plenty of assets moving forward as well. They've got control over all of the Nets picks over the next couple of seasons. They can, even still explore possibly trading Jalen Green like they reportedly did at the deadline. If Jalen Green is going to be kind of what he has been over the last couple of weeks, that makes it easier to move on from Van Vliet or Dylan Brooks, or both potentially, and move some of those pieces around as well. And again, the core of Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith, Alperen Şengün, and Jalen Green, those 4 guys, if they, reach their potential, that provides you such a strong foundation that you can use these assets on some of these other pieces on the roster that you really, really need to add to. And it's a team that I didn't expect to really be talking about at this point, except for, hey, who are they going to draft? They've got multiple first-round picks. What are they going to be doing in terms of the offseason, potentially making trades? But now it's like, hey, what are they going to be doing towards the end of the year? Could they potentially make a run in the play-in? And then also, how does that fuel what their future looks like? Now, at the end of the day, there are still some indicators that this is just, a hot stretch for Jalen Green. Everything about his game revolves around making jump shots. He takes a ton of jumpers, and if he's making shots, he's going to look really good. And it's very easy for someone to just have a hot stretch over a few weeks. And then, when you combine that with some of this Josh Jackson effect stuff that we were talking about earlier in the video, we could start next year and Jalen Green could be averaging, 16 points a game and shooting 40% from the field and go back to kind of who he has been over his first couple of seasons. But part of me thinks that this is a real thing, not just for him, but for the Rockets as well. We've seen what Ime Udoka has done as head coach in the past. We know that they've got an incredible amount of talent here and pieces that fit together in really, really interesting ways. And again, I think everything just depends on these guys continuing to grow and improve and make sure that this is like real, legit growth from guys like Jalen Green and, of course, Şengün all season as well, and continuing to shore up some of the defensive stuff. But Houston is quickly becoming one of the more interesting teams, not only within the end of the season, but also into the future in the offseason as well, in terms of some of the moves they could possibly make. So let me know down in the comment section below, do you guys think this is a real thing for Houston? Do you think this is just a hot little run here for Jalen Green, or do you think that this is a team that could potentially make some noise in the play-in, and this is kind of the start of a really exciting era here for Houston Rockets basketball, and with whatever assets they're going to have in the offseason, all these young guys, this could be the start of something really, really cool and really special in Houston.